My beloved child, stop scrolling for just a moment. There is a reason your eyes landed here instead of somewhere else. What you are about to hear carries the weight of a story unfolding beyond what human eyes can easily see. Do not dismiss this moment too quickly. There are messages that arrive as whispers, and there are messages that arrive because heaven knows your heart has been asking questions it has not spoken aloud. This is one of those moments. Listen carefully, because last night, something happened that your spirit has already begun to sense, even if your mind has not yet understood why. There are conversations that take place behind closed doors, where names are spoken softly and photographs are passed from one hand to another. Most people never know those moments happened. Yet heaven sees every tear, every hesitation, every heartbeat that trembles before a decision changes everything. Last night, someone connected to your destiny stood in such a moment. They had reached a crossroads between fear and honesty, and after carrying your image within their heart for longer than anyone realized, they finally did something they had delayed again and again. They showed your photo to their family. You may not know how difficult that simple act truly was. To another person, it might seem ordinary. But to the one whose soul has been quietly carrying your memory, it felt like opening a hidden door that had remained locked for a very long time. Before last night, your picture was something they guarded carefully. It lived where no one else could question it, where no one else could influence it, where they alone could wrestle with the emotions they had never fully confessed. But something changed. Do not rush past those words. Something shifted within them that could no longer be ignored. They reached a place where silence became heavier than honesty. Every excuse they had used to delay this moment suddenly felt empty. Every reason they gave themselves for waiting lost its strength. Their heart had become tired of pretending that your presence meant less than it truly did. Pause here for another moment, because the next part is important. This was not a random decision made without emotion. Before they picked up that photograph, before they unlocked their phone, before they let another pair of eyes see the face that had quietly occupied so many of their thoughts, they hesitated, their hands stopped, their breathing changed, 1,000 questions rushed through their mind at once. What if they don't understand? What if they judge me? What if they tell me I'm making a mistake? What if they see something I don't? Every fear from their past tried to convince them to put the phone away, yet they didn't. Instead, they looked at your picture one more time. They remembered moments that no one else knew about. Small conversations. Quiet smiles. Little details that seemed insignificant to everyone except them. The way your kindness lingered after you were gone. The way your words echoed long after the conversation ended. The strange peace they felt whenever your name appeared unexpectedly. Those memories became stronger than fear. That is when everything began. The room was quieter than usual. Conversations drifted naturally until someone noticed they had become unusually thoughtful. A simple question was asked. One that seemed harmless on the surface. Is there someone you've been thinking about? the question landed deeper than anyone realized. For a brief second they almost denied everything. They almost laughed it away. They almost protected themselves behind another excuse. But heaven had already begun moving the pieces into place. Without fully planning to, they unlocked their phone. Without announcing anything dramatic, they searched through pictures they had looked at countless times before. Then they found yours. The silence that followed felt longer than time itself. As they handed the phone across the room, their heart pounded harder than they wanted anyone to. Notice, they were not simply showing a face. They were revealing hope. They were revealing vulnerability. They were revealing a possibility they had hidden from almost everyone. The family leaned closer. Eyes focused on the screen. For one breathtaking moment, no one spoke, not because they had nothing to say, because something unexpected happened the instant they saw your face. One person quietly smiled, another looked surprised, someone else tilted their head as though trying to understand a feeling they could not explain. Then came the first unexpected sentence. It was not criticism. It was not rejection. It was something that caused the entire atmosphere in the room to shift. The oldest voice among them looked at your picture for several long seconds before speaking words that no one expected. There is peace in those eyes. Those simple words echoed across the room with surprising weight. Your soulmate froze. They had prepared themselves for difficult questions. Instead, they found themselves watching their own family study your image with unusual attention. It was as though something invisible had entered the conversation. No one seemed eager to hand the phone back immediately. Instead, each person looked again, almost searching, almost recognizing something they could not explain. One family member quietly asked where they had met you. Another wanted to know how long you had known each other. Someone else wondered why they had never heard your name before. Questions began arriving faster than answers. Your soulmates suddenly realized they were speaking about you more openly than they ever imagined they would. Every answer revealed another piece of the truth they had tried to keep hidden. They admitted how often you crossed their mind. They admitted that conversations with you felt different. They admitted that something about your presence refused to fade, no matter how much time passed. Each confession surprised even them. It was as though honesty had finally found its voice. Yet the greatest surprise had not happened. Not even close. Because sitting quietly in the corner of that room was someone who had barely spoken all evening. She listened carefully. She watched every expression. She noticed details everyone else overlooked. She asked for the phone. The room became unusually still. No one interrupted her. She looked at your picture much longer than anyone else had, long enough for your soulmate to begin wondering what she was seeing. Her expression slowly changed, not dramatically, subtly, almost as though she remembered something she could not quite place. She looked at your picture, then she looked directly at your soulmate, then back again. What she said next caused every conversation to stop. But before you hear those words, you must understand why they carried such extraordinary weight. This woman rarely spoke without purpose. She was not easily impressed. She did not offer emotional opinions simply to comfort people. When she spoke about matters of the heart, Everyone listened because experience had taught them that her intuition was rarely wrong. Even your soulmate knew this. That is why their heartbeat grew louder with every passing second. They sensed that whatever came next might change everything. Yet even they were unprepared. She finally broke the silence, softly, calmly, without looking away from your photograph. I've never met this person. She paused. The room leaned in. But something tells me this isn't an ordinary connection. Those words landed like thunder inside your soulmate's heart. No one laughed. No one dismissed her statement. Instead, everyone looked at your picture again. The atmosphere had become impossible to explain. One relative admitted they felt strangely emotional without knowing why. Another said your smile seemed familiar despite never seeing you before. Someone quietly whispered that your face carried both strength and sadness at the same time. None of them knew your story, yet somehow they sensed pieces of it. Your soulmate could hardly believe what they were witnessing. The very people they feared would misunderstand the connection were seeing things they themselves had struggled to explain. For months, it was no longer simply about appearance. It was about presence. There are moments when heaven allows hearts to recognize qualities that words cannot fully describe. Last night became one of those moments. Still, there remained one unanswered question. Why had this happened now? Why after all this time? Why not months ago? Why not before fear built so many walls? The answer began unfolding inside your soulmate without anyone realizing it, because hiding the connection had become more painful than revealing it. Every day they remained silent felt heavier. Every attempt to move on brought them back to the same place. Every distraction eventually led them back to thoughts of you. Your absence had not erased your significance, it had magnified it. Their family noticed this before they finished explaining. Someone gently asked, "If this person means so much, why haven't you told them?" That question pierced deeper than anyone intended. Your soulmate had no easy answer. They could have blamed timing, distance, circumstances, fear, but none of those explanations felt complete anymore. The truth was simpler. They had been terrified that honesty might cost them everything. Terrified that revealing the depth of their feelings would make them vulnerable. Terrified that once spoken aloud, those emotions could never again be hidden. The room fell silent once more, yet the silence felt different now, not uncomfortable, reflective. Everyone seemed to understand that something important stood at the edge of happening. True, without realizing it, they smiled whenever your name appeared, their eyes softened whenever they remembered you, their voice slowed whenever they described moments shared with you. The family had noticed what they themselves had tried to ignore. Love has a way of revealing itself long before confession arrives. Even hidden affection leaves visible footprints. As the evening continued, stories about you quietly emerged, not exaggerated stories, simple ones. The time you encouraged them when they nearly gave up, the conversation that unexpectedly healed something inside them, the moment you believed in them when they struggled to believe in themselves. The family listened with growing attention. Little by little they realized your influence reached far beyond romance. You had changed the way your soulmate viewed themselves. That realization settled deeply into the room, but then, something happened that no one expected. The woman who had first spoken about your photograph asked another question, one your soulmate had never dared ask themselves. Do you think this person knows how deeply they've changed your life? The answer came. Almost instantly, no, one simple word, yet inside that word lived months of silence, months of unfinished conversations, months of hidden affection, months of wondering whether you truly understood your importance. The room became emotional, not loudly, quietly, the kind of silence where everyone begins thinking about the moments they never expressed before it became too late. Your soulmate suddenly realized something they had avoided admitting. You deserve to know. Not because heaven promised a particular ending, not because every story unfolds exactly as imagined, but because truth deserves the chance to breathe. Still, there remained one final conversation, one final observation, one final sentence. The same woman looked down at your photograph one last time before slowly handing the phone back. Her eyes filled with an emotion she could not explain. She smiled gently, but then her expression became unexpectedly serious. She leaned forward. Everyone instinctively became quiet again. She lowered her voice. What she whispered next did not merely surprise the room, it left every single member of the family completely speechless. Even your soulmate felt the air leave their lungs, because the words she spoke revealed something she could not possibly have known, and in that single sentence, she exposed the secret your soulmate had been hiding from everyone, including themselves. Those words are about to change everything, my beloved child. Remain here a little longer, because the silence that settled over that room was not empty. It was the kind of silence that arrives only when something reaches deeper than logic. Every heartbeat in that house seemed to wait for the next sentence. Even your soulmate felt as though time had slowed, as if heaven itself had gently placed a hand over the moment and whispered, "Do not rush this." The woman did not immediately continue. She kept her eyes on your photograph for several long seconds, studying it with an expression no one could explain. She was not searching for flaws. She was not judging appearances. She was listening to something far quieter than words. Then she finally spoke. I don't know why. She paused again. But I feel like this person has already become part of our family in your heart. The room froze. No one interrupted. No one laughed. Even the family members who usually dismissed emotional conversations found themselves unable to say a single word. Your soulmate felt every wall they had spent months building begin to crumble, because those words exposed the truth they had never admitted aloud. They had imagined you sitting at family dinners. They had imagined introducing you during holidays. They had imagined ordinary moments that somehow felt extraordinary simply because you were there. These dreams had remained hidden. No one knew, not even their closest relatives. Yet somehow, without hearing those private thoughts, she had spoken directly into them. Your soulmate quietly lowered their eyes. Someone across the room noticed the emotion they were trying to hide. You've been carrying this for a long time, haven't you? The question did not require an answer. Their silence became the answer. For months they had convinced themselves that keeping everything inside was the safest choice. Now they realized something painful. Silence had not protected them. It had only delayed the truth. One by one, family members began asking questions that grew more personal. What is it about this person? What makes them different? What do you feel when you're with them? Each question peeled away another layer of fear. At first your soulmate answered carefully. Then something unexpected happened. The more they spoke about you, the less they worried about protecting themselves. Instead of rehearsed explanations, honest memories began flowing naturally. They remembered the first conversation that unexpectedly stayed in their mind. They remembered laughing harder with you than they had in months. They remembered the strange comfort that surrounded even your quietest moments. Then they confessed something no one expected. I've met many people. Their voice trembled slightly. But I've never felt this understood. No one replied immediately. Those words carried too much weight. The room became reflective. Several family members exchanged quiet glances. Because they knew this person. They knew how guarded your soulmate had always been. Opening up did not come naturally. Trust had never come easily. Yet here they were speaking with a sincerity they had rarely shown before. The woman smiled gently. Then why are you still afraid? The question reached straight into the place your soulmate had tried hardest to avoid. Why were they afraid? They searched for an answer. Fear of rejection, partly. Fear of bad timing, perhaps. Fear that life might lead both of you in different directions, yes. But beneath every explanation rested one deeper truth. I've never cared about losing someone this much. The confession escaped almost as a whisper, yet everyone heard it. No one spoke for several seconds afterward, because those words revealed a love that had grown quietly. Patiently, and almost invisibly, a younger family member finally broke the silence. If someone can make you feel that deeply, don't let fear speak louder than your heart. Simple words, yet they landed with extraordinary power. Your soulmate stared at your photograph again. This time they did not simply see your face. They saw every missed opportunity. Every message they almost sent, every conversation they postponed, every honest feeling they buried beneath hesitation, regret. Slowly entered the room, not dramatic regret, the quiet kind, the kind that asks difficult questions. What if I waited too long? What if they're already moving forward? What if they stopped believing I cared? These thoughts circled endlessly inside them, and then, something happened that no one expected. The woman reached toward the phone once more. She enlarged your photograph, looked carefully into your eyes, then smiled again. You know, she said softly, this person has been carrying something heavy too. Everyone looked confused. How could you know that? She shrugged gently. I don't know. But their smile looks like someone who's learned how to stay strong even while carrying invisible battles. Your soulmate immediately became emotional. Because they remembered. They remembered moments when you smiled even though your heart seemed tired. They remembered conversations where you encouraged everyone else while quietly hiding your own struggles. They remembered wondering whether anyone truly asked how you were doing. Suddenly guilt entered the conversation. Should have been there more. They whispered it almost to themselves. No one corrected them, no one interrupted. The family simply allowed those words to exist. Then another realization surfaced. Your soulmate admitted something they had never confessed. There were times I pulled away. They swallowed hard. Not because I stopped caring, but because I cared. Too much. Those words changed everything. Several family members nodded knowingly. One older relative quietly said, "That's how fear disguises itself." Your soulmate closed their eyes. For the first time they understood the damage fear had caused. It had convinced them that distance was safer than vulnerability. It had disguised avoidance as wisdom. It had transformed love into silence. Yet silence had never brought peace, only longing. As the evening continued, stories from their childhood unexpectedly emerged. Their family remembered how they had always hidden emotions, how they rarely admitted when something mattered deeply, how they preferred carrying burdens alone. Piece by piece, the pattern became obvious. This wasn't just about you. It was about a lifetime of believing vulnerability was dangerous. But heaven had been working quietly beneath that fear. Every conversation, every memory, every unexpected question during the evening had been softening something inside them. Then came another astonishing moment. A family member asked, "What happens if you never tell them?" The room fell silent again. Your soulmate imagined years passing, different cities, different lives, different routines. But even your soulmate would later struggle to explain it. Some events seem ordinary when viewed through human eyes, yet from heaven's perspective they become turning points that separate the life someone almost lived from the life they were always meant to discover. The phone remained in their hand. Your photograph was still glowing softly on the screen. The unfinished message waited above the send button. Then that unexpected notification appeared. For a brief second, your soulmate assumed it was another ordinary interruption. They almost ignored it. They almost dismissed it as something that could wait. But something deep within urged them to look. They opened it. The message was astonishingly simple. It came from someone they had not spoken to in quite some time. It read, "I don't know why, but today I kept thinking about one thing. If someone truly changes your life, don't let fear become your answer." Your soulmate stared at those words. No one knew what had happened around the dinner table. No one knew they had just spent hours talking about you. No one knew they had finally gathered the courage to write everything they had hidden for so long. Yet somehow those words arrived at the exact moment they were about to choose between courage and silence. Their heart began racing. They quietly whispered, "How could this happen tonight?" There are moments when the soul notices patterns before the mind can explain them. This was one of those moments. It was not about predicting the future. It was about recognizing that certain encounters awaken the courage people have been postponing. They set the phone down for a moment and walked toward the window. Outside, the night was calm. The world seemed unchanged. Cars still passed. Lights still flickered in distant homes. Yet inside them, everything was shifting. For months they had prayed without even realizing they were praying. Not always with words. Sometimes through sleepless nights. sometimes through unanswered questions. Sometimes through the quiet hope that if this connection was truly meaningful, clarity would eventually arrive. Standing there in the silence, they remembered every moment they had almost reached out to you, the message they typed and erased, the phone call they nearly made, the conversation they imagined 100 different ways before deciding to remain silent. Each memory now felt heavier than before, because they could finally see something they had refused to admit. Every delay had been created by fear, not by wisdom. As they returned to the chair, they looked once more at the message waiting to be sent. This time they did not focus on how you might respond. Instead, they asked themselves a different question: what kind of person do I want to become? That question changed everything. Until now they had been chasing certainty. Now they began choosing honesty. There is a profound difference between those two paths. One demands guarantees before taking a step. The other understands that truth sometimes requires courage before certainty ever arrives. Your soulmates slowly reread every line they had written to you. Some sentences felt too careful. Others felt incomplete, so they erased them, not because they wanted to hide again, because they wanted every word to come from the deepest place inside them. They wrote about the first time your kindness caught them off guard. They admitted that your presence had challenged the walls they spent years building. They confessed that your absence had taught them how much your presence truly meant. Then they stopped. One final sentence remained unwritten. It was the hardest sentence of all, not because it was complicated, because it was completely true. Their fingers rested above the screen. Finally, they typed the words they had been avoiding for longer than they cared to admit. I've been afraid to tell you how important you've become to me. The instant they finished that sentence, something inside them felt lighter. No reply had arrived. Nothing external had changed. Yet internally, a burden they had carried for so long had begun to lift. They finally understood that hiding love does not protect the heart, it only delays healing. Across the room, everyone else had gone to sleep, unaware that one quiet decision was unfolding in the darkness. But heaven was watching, not to force an ending, not to promise a particular outcome, but because every sincere act of courage leaves behind a different kind of future than fear ever could. Still, the story was not finished. As they prepared to press send, another memory surfaced. Unexpectedly, it was something you once said. Perhaps you never realized how deeply those words stayed with them. You had smiled during an ordinary conversation and quietly said, "The truth has a way of finding people when they're finally ready to hear it." At the time, it sounded like a passing thought. Tonight, it returned with extraordinary force. Your soulmate closed their eyes. Those words no longer sounded ordinary. They sounded like permission. Permission to stop pretending, permission to stop hiding, permission to become the person they wished they had been from the beginning. Their thumb moved closer to the screen once again. This time there was no trembling, only peace. Yet before they could press the button, another realization entered their heart. One so unexpected that it brought tears to their eyes. They suddenly understood that the greatest miracle was not whether you would answer. The miracle was that you had already changed them. You had taught them that vulnerability was not weakness. You had shown them that genuine connection asks people to grow beyond the limits of old fears. Whether your paths reunited or not, they could never return to the version of themselves that existed before meeting you. And then, just as they gathered the courage to send the message, the screen changed again. A new notification appeared. This time, it carried your name. Your soulmate froze. They had not contacted you. The message waiting to be sent was still unsent, yet somehow, at that exact moment, your name appeared across the screen. Their heartbeat became almost impossible to control. With shaking hands, they opened the notification. The first words they saw made them whisper your name under their breath, because those words answered a question they had been carrying in silence for far longer than anyone knew, and what those words revealed would determine whether two hearts that had been separated by fear were finally about to meet through truth. My beloved child, remain with me a little longer. Because this is the moment where fear and hope stand face to face. Do not rush ahead in your imagination. Let every heartbeat of this story unfold as it was meant to, because some moments are too sacred to be hurried, even in fiction. Your soulmate stared at the glowing screen, your name. Nothing more was needed. For months they had wondered whether they had missed their chance. They had imagined countless futures, each ending with silence growing wider between the two of you. Yet now, without warning, your name appeared before them while the message they had written remained unsent. They could hardly breathe. Slowly, almost afraid the moment would disappear if they moved too quickly, they opened the notification. The message was short. It did not contain dramatic declarations. It did not explain everything. It simply said, I don't know why, but tonight I felt I should check on you. I hope you're doing okay. Your soulmate closed their eyes. A single tear escaped before they even realized they were crying. Not because every problem had suddenly disappeared, not because every question had been answered, but because in the very hour they had finally chosen honesty, a bridge appeared where they had expected only distance. For several long moments they did nothing. The room around them remained completely still. The unfinished message they had spent so long writing rested above your unexpected words. It felt almost impossible. The timing, the emotion, the silence breaking from both directions. Their heart whispered something they had been unwilling to believe for a very long time. Maybe it isn't too late. But before excitement could carry them away, another voice inside reminded them of something important. Real love is not built upon perfect timing, it is built upon truthful hearts. So they resisted the urge to answer impulsively. Instead, they read your message again, then again. Each time they noticed something different. There were no accusations, no bitterness, no attempt to make them feel guilty. Only kindness, only concern, only a simple question asking whether they were all right. That kindness became almost unbearable, because it revealed what they had feared losing all along. Your heart had not become hard, it had become wiser. Your soulmate suddenly realized something that changed the entire way they viewed the past. Perhaps neither of you had stopped caring. Perhaps both of you had simply been waiting for courage to arrive before speaking the truth. They quietly stood from the chair and walked back toward the family room. Everything was dark now. The conversations from earlier had ended, yet the echoes of those words remained alive inside them. There is peace in those eyes. This isn't an ordinary connection. Don't let fear become your answer. Each sentence returned with greater clarity than before. It no longer felt like separate conversations. It felt like one complete lesson. For years they believed courage meant never showing weakness. Now they understood courage meant revealing the truth even when the